That in many churches today. One of the greatest things about Unitarian Universalism is that we have given ourselves permission to take from all the world religions things we like and what work well in maintaining our spiritual lives. Some of you are probably saying to yourselves right now, but isn't religion just a bunch of superstitious claptrap that has historically perpetuated ignorance and caused immense suffering? On the one hand, it is true that religion has very often been used badly and to very destructive ends. On the other hand, religion has brought meaning for billions of people and has been a driving force for good in society. Science is, for instance, born out of Christianity. The Christian doctrine that God was interested enough in the material world to enter it and become a material being in the person of Jesus suggested that the physical world was something people should get to know better. Also, Islam laid much of the groundwork for modern mathematics, which is the language of science. Most importantly, it was the Arab mathematicians that invented the concept of zero, and something the Mayans did also. The way I think of the matter is this. I do not imagine that the supernatural stories in the Old Testament or the old religions are literally true. Marduk probably did not, for instance, split the body of his mother Tiamat in two to make the heaven and the earth, as depicted in ancient Babylonian mythology. Prometheus is probably not chained to a rock somewhere for stealing fire from the gods. Being baptized by the blood of a bull will probably not guarantee eternal life, as in the practice of the Mithraic cultists, that a religion widely practiced by Roman gladiators. Jesus probably did not literally rise from the tomb after 3 days of being dead. Nor did Moses literally split the Red Sea. Nor did the Buddha sit for 7 uninterrupted years under the bo tree. What I do imagine is that the old religions, while not literally true, are revelatory in that they open a window onto the human spirit. In the cross of Christ, for example, we see that living our greatest, most creative lives mean placing ourselves in the excruciating tension between what society demands and what authentic being is calling us towards. Also placing ourselves in that axis between light and dark, where our creative selves are born. Today we are looking at Judaism. It is also a religion of exquisite tensions. On the one hand, I am ashes and dust. On the other hand, for me, God made the universe. Some time ago, I wrote an article for the Herald Palladium titled "Faith Without Doubt is Dead." This is a takeoff from a famous passage in the New Testament. Faith without works is dead. This is a well-known passage to most Christians, and I have to admit, I was trying to be a bit provocative. In the article, I suggested that honest doubt was important if one wanted to have a meaningful and creative faith. A few days later, one of the more conservative churches in St. Joe put out a sign in front of their church that read, "There is no doubt here." This is an example, I think, of how religion can devolve into an antiquated belief system that is mostly placebo. Plus, it takes a lot of energy that could be used for living to squeeze out one's doubt. The tension between faith and doubt is where we must live if we really want to take on the world. There's a gorgeous story that illustrates this from the Jewish tradition. 2 rabbis, now in their 80s, Benjamin and Isaac, have been friends since childhood. They had since their days together at yeshiva a running argument. Does or does not God exist? They could never agree. The odd thing is that they would often switch sides. They were just never on the same side at the same time. One day, the 2 old friends picked up their old argument. Does or does not God exist? They argued all through the night, and finally at about 2 a.m, they both agreed. God does not exist. They happened to be at Benjamin's place, so given the lateness of the hour, Isaac stayed overnight. The next morning, Benjamin rose and went to find Isaac. He found his old friend in the garden saying his morning prayers. Benjamin exclaimed, "Why are you saying your morning prayers? We agreed last night that God does not exist." Isaac replied, "What does that have to do with anything?" There's another story that I especially love that fairly sums up the tension that folks in this age, and especially ministers and priests, often find themselves struggling with. The story touches me so deeply that I am not certain I will make it through without some emotion. The story is titled "The Baal Shem Tov Lights of Fire." Did anybody heard this story before? The Baal Shem Tov Lights of Fire. It did not come from Reader's Digest. When Rabbi Baal Shem Tov, Israel Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, saw that the Jewish people were threatened by tragedy, he would go to a particular place in the forest where he lit a fire, recite a particular prayer, and ask for a miracle to save the Jews from the threat. Because of the holy fire and faithfulness of the prayer, the miracle was accomplished, averting the tragedy. Later, when the Baal Shem Tov's disciple, the Majid Mizrich, had to intervene with heaven for the same reason, he went to the same place in the forest where he told the master of the universe that while he did not know how to light the fire, he could still recite the prayer, and again, the miracle was accomplished. Still later, Rabbi Moshe Leab of Sasav, in turn a disciple of the Majid of Mizrich, went into the forest to save his people. He said, "I do not know how to light the fire." He pleaded with God, and I do not know how to know the prayer, but I can find the place. This must be sufficient. Once again, the miracle was accomplished. When it was the turn of Rabbi Israel Rejin, the great-grandson of the Majid of Mizrich, who was named after Baal Shem Tov, to avert the threat, he sat in his armchair, holding his head in his hands, and said to God, "I am unable to light the fire. I do not know the prayer, and I cannot even find the place in the forest. All I can do is tell the story, and that must be enough." This story is a wonderful metaphor for what is happening right now to our species. We are thrown back on ourselves. In prior ages, looking back as far as anthropology allows, most people were through the ages thoroughly embedded in a meaning system that contained them, gave them identity, and allowed them a sense of security and a foundation for action. All this began to melt away in the modern age. The rituals, the saints, the sacraments, the confessional, the great cathedrals, the powerful symbol of the cross, are the equivalent of the prayer, the fire, and the forest in this story. They are no longer, for most of us, available to us. They have lost their power. We are, as I mentioned before, thrown back on ourselves. There is no longer any ground on which to stand. As Jesus said, the foxes have their holes, the birds of the air have their nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. The result is that we are now living in an age of profound anxiety. We see this anxiety manifest as hate, judgment, political polarization, mass shootings, and white supremacy. We see the anxiety incarnate as hate in Kyle Rittenhouse, Dylan Roof, and the Ku Klux Klan, and in everyday people like you and me. Now that is the bad news. There is, however, some really good news. We may have forgotten how to say the prayers, and maybe we can no longer find the sacred place in the forest, but we still have ourselves. It is in ourselves that the sacred fire still burns. Our job is to tend our fires so that they will cast light into the darkness and guide our way. On the one hand, it is easy to smother your fire with judgment and the drama of political division. On the other hand, there are unlimited supplies of love, compassion, and grace with which to feed our fires. And at this point, I was going to have a meditation, but I think, given the lateness of the hour,